guys, how's it going? It's Krista here, and today I'll be focusing on how I made this Happy Mother's Day card, but at the end I will break down how I used different sentiments and embossing folders to extend this design for all occasions of spring. I created this alcohol inked background last night just to make sure that it was really dry when I went to die cut it. And I'll link a card up top to show you how I made these alcohol inked backgrounds. The colors that I used today are all from Tim Holtz alcohol ink line, and I used Stream, Cobalt, Fiesta, the Sterling Alloy, Monsoon, Boysenberry, and some Mermaid. And to ensure that they blended well together, I used some alcohol blending solution. The first element of my card that I'll create today is the Hummingbird. And to create this hummingbird, I use Simon Says Stamp Layered Hummingbird Wafer Die. And I'm choosing my favorite portion of this alcohol ink background, but the truth is, all the hummingbirds, they always turn out great using alcohol inked backgrounds. I'm using Tombow liquid adhesive to glue those pieces together. And the thing that I really like about this die is they have little score lines to show you where each of the pieces go. So this die does have a die cut for the beak, but over the years I've stopped using it, but just know that it is available if you want to add the beak portion to your hummingbird. And with those die cuts adhered together, I'll set that aside to dry and move on to the rest of my card front. And for the card front, I'm using Simon Says Stamp Cherry Blossom Embossing Folder and Cutting Die on a piece of Recollections shimmer cardstock. And I want to make sure that the shimmer side is pointed to the indented side of the embossing folder so that when it's run through the die cut machine, it'll be raised up. The shimmer will be raised up and pop up from the rest of the cardstock. And I chose to cut this piece down to a 3.5-inch square piece of cardstock. And I like to cut that down first, just because I find when I try to cut a piece of cardstock that has been through an embossing folder, it tends to tear. And for the sentiment today, I'm using Happy Mother's Day from Spellbinder's Happy Parents Day foil plate and die set. And the hot foil I'm using today is Fuchsia Flower, also from Spellbinders. I want to make sure that the fuchsia side of the hot foil is against the plate, and that the shimmer side of the cardstock is up against the foil before I run that through my die cutting machine. And the thing that I really like about this set is that it comes with the coordinating dies as well as the hot foil plates. So with that sentiment ran through my die cut machine, it's time to start adhering the card front together. And I chose to add the hummingbird to the card front with some Tombow liquid adhesive. And when I place that down, I want to make sure that it's in the center of my cherry blossom cardstock. And to add the sentiment to my cardstock, I chose to use some Tombow permanent tape runner. And I like to add my tape runner to the back of my sentiment over a piece of scrap cardstock. This just prevents any extra adhesive from adhering to my glass mat. This is where it's going to get a little controversial, and I apologize that the measurements are just a little bit off camera, but I'm creating a 4-inch square piece of cardstock out of the pink metallic pastel cardstock from Recollections, and I am not going to cut out the middle. And the reason that I'm not going to cut out the middle is because when I have an embossed card front, I really like that support of the metallic cardstock to be across the entire card front and not just on a frame, especially if I'm sending it through the mail. And I will use some Tombow permanent tape runner to add the embossed cardstock onto the metallic piece of cardstock. And I have a 4-inch square card base, and I made sure to place my Handmade with Love stamp on there first, just because I'll be adding some embellishments. And to add the card front to the card base, I use that Tombow permanent tape runner as well. I find when I use a glue, sometimes, especially with the metallic cardstock, it tends to ripple a little bit, but I don't have that problem when I use a tape runner. Now I noticed that this card base to the card front was a little kind of cattywampus, so I'm going to use my paper trimmer as well as my scissors just to clean up that edge. And I really like to clean up that edge because it gives my card a really nice finished look. It makes it really crisp and clean. And sometimes when there's just a little bit on the edges like this, the trimmer, well, this trimmer doesn't clean it up very well, so I come in with some scissors just to tidy it up. The embellishments that I'm using today are from This Calls for Confetti. It's their diamond and pearl mix, and I'm adding a little of those diamond embellishments to the centers of the cherry blossoms. And I chose not to add them to all the centers just because of the cost. And I find that less is more. The embellishments pop more when there's only a few in a few select places. And for the eye of the hummingbird, I used Crystal Nuvo drops in black. I find that adding these crystal drops really bring the bird to life. And that completes today's card with just a quick breakdown of how to use different embossing folders and different sentiments to extend this design for all occasions of spring. All of these cards were made using Spellbinder's Yana's Sentiments Glimmer Hot Foil plates. And it was the embossing folders that I changed. So on the top left, I used the Simon Says Stamp Cherry Blossom embossing folder again. And the two middle cards on the top, I used 3D Textured Impressions Kathrin Breen Lacey embossing folder. The top right, I used Simon Says Stamp embossing folder Floating Flowers from their Celebrate line. The bottom left, I used Tim Holtz Sizzix Botanical 3D Texture embossing folder. And for the final card, I used that Cherry Blossom embossing folder again, but for the sentiment, I used Spellbinder's Wonderful Script Sentiment, and I chose the word hello. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.